Are we live right now?
I believe so.
Can I watch myself on the YouTube?
You can, but it's going to be
super duper consistent if they get going.
That's the old one.
Okay.
That is the old one.
Even though I named it that thing, it's broadcasting under electrodominance and alternate wind conditions episode live stream. I don't know why.
Big fan of electrodominance and alternate wind cons.
Well, there's a way to change that. So
I can try and log in to, use another account.
So I got this here open. I'm going to edit this right now. Yep. I'm going to just edit it right here.
Okay.
We're doing it.
It's going to be GPLA recap and Izzet. We're live right now as I'm titling the episode. We need to be entertaining as F right now.
That's right. To all of the maybe 2 people that are watching, we got to give them a reason to tune in early.
Izzet, Phoenix.
Yep, 2 people. There
Look
are
at
2
that.
people here.
Look at
wait,
that.
Is it me and you? Are we the 2 people? Or is it 2 other people?
It's possible it's us. Select all. I'm going to delete all these details. And it's going to be same thing. I'm just going to leave the description blank. Oh yeah, people upstairs banging around. It's a good idea.
That's what happens when you look to record a podcast. So we get some banging.
Who should I text? Who's the best person up there?
Probably John. John is, I think, the most likely to be banging. And if it's not him...
Hey John, would you mind keeping it down upstairs, please? Question mark? Yeah, that's right. I use verbal text. Oh, now it's texting that.
What could go wrong?
All right.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's have you guys talk, and so I can make sure it's coming through good.
I'm talking to the microphone, but I'm also talking into the lob, so I'd love to know if the levels are
Yep,
good.
I'm talking into the microphone. My lav is also near my head, so hopefully it's going to pick me up.
Yeah, sweet. I'm going to just keep my phone out here in case I need it for any reason.
Yep, looking up deck lists and such, so we can talk about Magic, the Gathering.
Great.
And
As soon as we are ready to start the episode, you just let me know. Marshall, our producer, whose name is Marshall, he's right there. Some tech diff. It's short for technical difficulties.
I like it.
Sweet.
That's what we call it in the industry.
It's an industry term. It's really just,
Okay.
hodgepodge. You were good to go? Stop making jokes. Great.
Stop cracking wines now. All right, everything is recording video, recording audio. We're streaming to the internet. The internet sees us.
Cool.
We're ready to begin Masters of Modern episode for March the 5th, 2019.
March the 5th, 2019 episode. I'm going to stream our own podcast here so we can watch us talk. Oh, 8 people. It can't all be us. All right.
got a bank of 8 phones lined up to beef our numbers.
We are ready. So... Music. And welcome back to the Masters of Modern podcast. What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Bateman, not Alex Kessler. He couldn't make it to this one. We got a good backup for him. We got a good replacement. His name's Michael Grothy. What's up?
Hi, everyone.
You guys know Michael. He's a talented Magic player. He's got a good beard.
Yep,
fills in well
been on
for
the
Alex.
show a couple times.
Yeah, he's really good at Magic. Truthfully, he's better at Magic than Alex or I, but that'll be the only time I ever say that out loud.
It's recorded though, luckily. So
luckily for eternity, we are here to talk to you guys about Magic. There's a lot to talk about today. This is the Masters of Modern, and we talk about Modern on this show. What a weekend! GPLA, it happened.
yeah,
And,
it was a lot of fun. Local GP is always great. Everybody's coming out. People are traveling. Friends I haven't seen in a while were around. It was good.
The real reason Alex is not on this episode is because I lost a bet to Alex, and that bet was that I was going to have to play a real deck at a GP, which I did, and had my best GP finish in Constructed ever. So Alex wasn't allowed to come on this episode because I'm going to have to hear about it for the rest of my life.
Sounds like you should lose bets more often, man.
That's Marshall. We got our producer, Marshall, in the house. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great.
Marshall's got a good sandwich.
It's up and running. Yeah.
He's got a good sandwich. He's going to try to eat it, but not into the mic. But if you guys hear him eating into the mic, you know, that's the reality of podcasting. Sometimes you have to eat while you do shows. I don't know.
Thanks for the sandwich, Ben.
Yeah, you got it, bud. So GPLA happened. I played a real deck. That real deck was Izzet Phoenix, and I day 2'd at a modern GP for the first time, which was sweet. Now Dana Fisher also did that, and she's 8, so I can't really stand on that much of a soapbox.
She's an incredible Magic player, though.
She's very good.
she's better than a lot of Magic players at 8.
Yeah, it's impressive.
And to be fair, she probably has been playing for a greater percentage of her life than you have for your life.
Yeah.
It's definitely not true.
Oh, really?
I've been playing Magic since I was 7.
Oh, wow. All right.
So
I take it back.
Unless she started playing Magic when she was like 3.5, I got her beat. So this podcast is going to be all about talking about how much better than Dana. Just kidding.
Tonight on the podcast, Ben Bateman versus Dana Fisher. Who's better?
We love Dana Fisher, and actually are hoping to have Dana Fisher eventually on the podcast. But all that aside, this is the Masters of Modern. We're going to talk Modern on the show. We're going to talk about the tournament. We're going to talk about the Modern format. We're going to talk about all kinds of fun things. And before we do all that, there's some things I want to do. The first one is give the people an opportunity to follow along with Michael's career, because Michael designs games. Michael plays Magic. He's on Twitter. Where can they find you?
I'm on Twitter at Dudard, D-U-D-A-R-D-D. I'm also a moderator in the Masters of Modern Facebook group, so I'm always looking there. So if anybody wants to find me there, I'm there.
Nice subtle plug there. We have a Facebook group. Incidentally, it and the Twitter are rivaling each other right now for which one is going to be the one. Oh, look at this. We have just a bunch of mic stands in our shot. Did I miss that? Oh.
They're over there. I don't know if they're in the shot.
They probably are. Well, it's fine. It's a professional podcast. Of course we have extra mic
They
stands.
are over there. I can get rid of them.
No, please, eat the sandwich on the mic. What was I going to say? I got distracted by the mic stands.
The Facebook and the Twitter.
Are rivaling for 5,000. They both are very close, and one of them is going to hit 5,000 sooner than the other. So follow us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter. You guys can find me at Ben Big Media. You can find the podcast at the MMCast, and there are lots of other shout-outs, but we'll get to those later with some sort of a cool podcast pre-roll. But what I do want to talk to you guys about is some of the big news. I mentioned it, but Dana Fisher was the youngest player in the history of Magic to make day 2 of a GP at 8 years old.
Playing Elves, her signature deck.
Yeah, she is awesome. She's very talented at Magic. Elves is a great learning deck, I think. And obviously, I think she's better than I am at Magic. But I think it's a great deck if you're a young player that wants to start. It being monocolor or close to monocolored in general, I think is strong. The fact that it's like creatures that can attack, but they also have a second function, I think is pretty strong. It's relatively straightforward if you have the win. Like, I don't know, maybe not though. Maybe Elves has lots and lots and lots of nuances because of all the mana you have to generate and the way you have to sequence it.
Yeah, I mean, your opponent has to... Your opponent's going to be killing your creatures too, which, like, you know, playing a creature deck is easy until your opponent has something, and then you have to be playing around what your opponent has to know if you have the kill or to know if it's safe to go for something or whatever, you know.
Yeah, I was just trying to think when I say that, it's not in any way to discuss the deck choice for a young player. It's more to think about if I was going to recommend to somebody who wanted to get into Modern, a young player who's learning the game.
Well, I think the best way to play Magic is to play what you like to play. I mean, like, Burn is one of the cheaper Modern decks, and it's not incredibly difficult to play. There's nuance to it, but it's, you know, an inexperienced player can still succeed with the deck, even if you don't know all the nuances. But a lot of people just aren't going to enjoy playing Burn. So I wouldn't just say, if you're a new Modern player, just play Burn. I would say, check out some deck lists, see what looks cool to you. If you're a big fan of playing with, you know, Terramander, play Phoenix. If you're a big fan of playing with Heritage Druid, play Elves. If you're, you know, everybody likes a different thing about Magic, and I think what's going to be best for you is if you play a deck you like, because you're going to put in the reps and you're gonna know the deck.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
Yeah, I mean, I believe the thing that Dana's win really shows is, you know, she always plays Elves, and Modern, like any non-rotating format, really rewards just really knowing the deck and knowing the matchups against the deck.
This is very true. And there are a few places that you can get as much high-level experience than sleeving it up at a GP, which Dana's done a lot of. If you play even just a full day 1 at a GP, honestly, it's pretty indestructible. Like, you get some stuff online, but it's different.
It's true. I've never been to a GP, even one where I like scrubbed out in the first 5 rounds where I didn't learn anything about my deck or the matchups or, you learn a lot at a GP.
There's a relatively high level of play at a GP. You have a lot of people that are there that want to win. Obviously, the further you go, the higher tables you are, the better you do. But the actual nuances of shuffling up a deck, like a physical game of Magic versus playing Moto, it's so different. And I've only played a little bit of Moto, but just the kind of triggers that you miss, things like that, that's stuff that Moto doesn't really allow you to do as easily. So anyway, huge congratulations to Dana. We hope to have her on the show at some point soon. Other news, Michael Burnett wins the GP with Izzet Phoenix. Same deck I played. Really, really good deck.
It's a good deck.
Slightly different list than I was playing.
Yep.
But interesting to see. Interesting to see that Alex's called shot on Izzet Phoenix was about as right as you could ever have on a called shot. That's going to probably go down in history as his greatest called shot, right?
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, he knew that Phoenix was good, and everybody on the internet was trying to tear him down, and he bought 32 of them for $1.50, and here we are.
My call of Terramander feels pretty good right now, but
Yeah.
nowhere near as good as Phoenix. Like, I was right about Terramander. That card is showing up now as a mainstay in both Modern and Standard, so...
And a little bit of Legacy.
Yeah, I mean, that card's really good.
Yeah.
That card is exactly what I thought it was going to be, which is just like...
Flying Man Plus.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the whole idea there is that when you talk about delve spells, one of the conversations when Angler started getting played a few years back in Modern was like, the card Thought Scour is Dark Ritual for this. That's what you get, right? I mean, but you're also getting a card out of it. And the same theory is pretty close to true with Terramander. It's obviously not the same nuts and bolts version, because like Thought Scour actually is for Grimag Angler that, because no matter what cards you're milling, it works. But in the same sense, the idea that this Flying Man can turn into something so much bigger based on cards you already want to be playing just makes the card a shoe-in.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. I actually saw Izzet Phoenix deck starting to play Sleight of Hand instead of Thought Scour. Thought Scour was just too inconsistent. You didn't really have a way to use your graveyard except if like Phoenixes were in there, or maybe Bedlam Reveler when people were playing that pre-Terramander. But Thought Scour was just kind of meh. But now that Terramander, yeah, I mean, Thought Scour got a lot better, and I see people playing Thought Scour like as a 4-of staple in the deck where they weren't before because of its synergy with Terramander.
Yeah. Absolutely. So we'll talk a little bit more about it Izzet Phoenix, guys. At the end of the episode, we're going to be doing an actual deck tech, but we're going to talk about matchups. I didn't write them down, so we'll be trying to go off of memory somewhat as far as like what I played against, what I lost against, but I have a pretty good memory for this type of thing, so I should be able to mostly remember. The last thing I did want to talk about is that the MMCast this last weekend hosted a Chaos Draft event. I wanted to thank everybody who came out for that. This is the second one of these we've done. It feels like this is going to start to be a yearly or even possibly twice a year thing we do at GPLA and GP Vegas. We are talking about doing some pretty cool stuff in Vegas. There's an event, an actual sanctioned side event we're hoping to get confirmed pretty soon, so we'll be talking about that. And then also something like we did here in LA. It was super fun. Every one of the stacks that you would get in your pod had one really, really good pack.
There's a picture up on the MMCast Twitter if you guys want to see, but yeah, there was like a pack of Stronghold, there was a pack of Weatherlight.
There was like 3 Weatherlights. There was a Time Spiral, Planar Chaos. There was like Zendikar. There was New Phyrexia.
There was like a couple of packs from each of the Masters sets, including Modern Masters 1 and 2.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, there was tons of good stuff. And so people showed up, and we ran, I think, 3 Chaos drafts consecutively. We had 24 people drafting, and then we had a bunch of other people playing Commander.
There was a foil Avacyn that got opened.
Oh, yeah. Somebody opened foil Leyline of Sanctity and also Noble Hierarch in the same pack.
Ooh,
Yeah,
I didn't see that one.
Pretty
What
sweet.
did you pick from that?
You take the Hierarch. Yeah. Long term, that's just like a card that's good always. One more reprinting of Leyline of Sanctity probably doesn't tank the value, but gets pretty close to tanking the value, whereas like it's almost impossible to tank Hierarch unless they just
Yeah,
tank another
Hierarch
card.
was down to 30 when they printed an Ultimate Masters, and it's not 30 anymore.
No. That card's, exceptionally good. So it was a really fun event, and just I wanted to thank everybody for showing up. We're looking forward to doing more stuff like that in the future. So I think we should probably get into our full show. I want to remember I want to just double check. Am I forgetting anything else really important that we wanted to talk about? We have another episode coming out next week where Alex and I are going to be talking about the Mulligan Rule. We're going to be talking about some of the cards and decks that get affected by it, as well as a little bit more into the Modern Horizons speculation. But I think otherwise we should probably just kind of start with where did...
I have the top 8 from. If you want
Oh, perfect.
Oh, I have it on my phone as well.
Well, yeah, hand that to me also. Just out. We have it out. You can keep your phone. You can look at it. I can look at it too.
What was in it?
Yeah, so I think that's probably what we are going to do, and I think that should start with kind of a conversation about how I came to Izzet Phoenix, why I came to Izzet Phoenix, and you're not Alex, so you're not going to gloat. But
I'm not going to gloat.
no, if you guys are listening to the show for the first time or watching for the first time, some of whom actually I met this last weekend, which was exciting. Some people told me that they have been watching the show and they found it on YouTube, which is exciting for us because the YouTube is newer. And speaking of which, subscribe, like, comment, please. It's the best thing you guys can be doing to help support us and grow the show. But historically, I play a lot of bad decks, and I say that jokingly and in like a what's the word I'm looking for? Tear yourself down for the sake of comedy, self-deprecating way, because I like to play cards that I think are awesome, and I want to do something that I think is kind of clever. That's historically what I do. And
Johnny, right? That's the Mark Rosewater
Rather
player psychographic.
Spike being the person who would take the best deck, Johnny being, and then Timmy being the person that wants.
Johnny wants to express their creativity through the game, kind of, right?
And I've always deemed myself as sort of a combo of the two, because I don't just take bad decks that are clearly bad, like that play really stupid 5-drops, but I take cards that I can sort of talk myself or someone else into why they would be interesting, and I'll usually pilot them to like a 5-4 finish or like 4-5, somewhere in that range. I think I've won like 6 rounds before, maybe in the old days, but probably not. Usually like 5 wins is about standard at a GP.
Yeah, I mean,
maybe 4.
I can't speak to that. I don't know all your GP records, but
maybe like 4-3 at a PTQ or a PPTQ. Like that's usually it's a little bit above 500. And I love playing those decks.
And to give the viewers an idea of what we're talking about, there was a fan of the cast who brought Ben a Grand Architect to sign, because that's one of his signature bad cards that he likes to play with.
I've signed Grand Architects, I've signed Claws of Gix, I've signed Scavenging, or
any Mirror Superion?
I've signed Mirror Superions, I've signed Bloodhall Oozes, I've signed many Spellskites. I mean, I love the cards I love. I love to play them. That's the point. That's what I like out of Magic. And so I don't know what I would have played at this tournament if I had tried to come up with something, but I do know that the promise I made to Alex and the fans was like, all right, why not? Like, I make a lot of jokes about it, but I don't mind winning games of Magic. It's fun to do. So I just decided I was going to play a Phoenix deck. I owned the Phoenixes. I had a lot of the cards for both the mono red version that I'd had my brother play in Portland, and I was going to play that. And then I was like, you know what? I like blue cards. This is very much my style of deck. Like, I love playing tempo decks. I love playing decks with cheap evasive threats that close the game out with soft counters. It's like my literal favorite thing in the world.
So what would you say the main difference between the blue deck and the red deck is?
Red's a lot more explosive, a lot less consistent. The cantrips in blue just like allow you to hit your ideal game plan a lot more consistently. You can't just you can end the game on like turn 3 if you have like a god draw, but I mean, it's less likely. The game is usually going to end on turn like 6 or 7 if you have a really good start with the blue-red version, and it'll end on the back of like, maybe you get in with a couple Phoenixes, maybe they take one out, you're taking away, they exile the Phoenixes or something, and then you like draw Crackling Drake and play it, and they don't have an answer, and you like dome them for 16. Like, that's like usually how the deck works. Versus the mono-red version, which the Revelers can kind of have you recover, but what you're really trying to do with that deck is land like a Soulscar Mage or something like that early, maybe a Reveler relatively early, and just close the game out by like turn 4. Like, it's just a damage game, and at a certain point, their life total is so low, all the Fiery Tempers and Bolts that you're top decking are just going to win you the game, and you don't really need to worry as much. They're both cool. Blue-red's better.
Okay. Just the consistency of blue-red you feel is more valuable?
Yeah, and also in game 2, your ability to hit your sideboard cards with all the cantrips makes it like way more relevant. You can actually legitimately play a one-of and like have a really good shot at, if you don't see it in your opening hand, you mull to 6, you still don't see it in your opening hand. Assuming that you'll probably see it, you have a decent chance. I mean, I won multiple matches this weekend with my 1-0 Shatterstorm. Like, multiple matches in game 3 by literally drawing my 1 Shatterstorm.
Yeah, I mean, in Modern, where the sideboard cards are so powerful and the strategies, there's so many linear strategies, just drawing your 1 sideboard card can win it. And a lot of the time, that means you just put 4 in your deck. But being able to save all that sideboard space with just 1 Shatterstorm and still finding it in the matchups where it's going to win it for you seems really valuable.
Can I see the pen, Marshall?
Yep.
That's our producer, Marshall, if I had to make it clear. We have a producer. So yeah, this tournament was a lot of fun. On Friday night, I went to play F&M. and I played Modern FNM so that I could make sure I get a couple reps in. The problem is I didn't have all the cards for the deck. You actually lent me the final 9 cards I needed the morning of.
Yep, I did. They're actually in my pocket right now. You just gave them back to me.
And what's funny is that it's not like they were irrelevant cards. I borrowed from Michael a 2nd Crackling Drake, 2 Spire Bluff Canals, 3 Surgical Extractions, and most importantly, 4 Thing in the Ice.
Yep.
So the version I played on Friday night had 0 Thing in the Ice, and I would argue Thing in the Ice is maybe the best card in the entire deck.
Really? Better than Phoenix?
You win more games in games 2 and 3 with that card than you win with Phoenix. Phoenix is pretty easy to answer, and everybody can. It's really hard to answer Thing in the Ice because most of what they're doing gets bounced. Like a Dredge deck, for instance, they struggle. If you have a Thing and you control the game with a Thing in the Ice, they have to go long and try to conflagrate you. They don't really, like if you're like disrupting their graveyard and you have a Thing in the Ice, they're usually not that fast because you're going to be able to control your Thing pretty easily.
Yeah, I've played the deck a few times, which is why I own all the cards. I haven't had a chance to play Modern much recently, and a combination of letting you borrow the cards and having not played a lot of Modern recently, I decided not to play in the GP. I just went and hung out and played side events and, you know, kind of watched what was going on. But in the little experience I have with the deck, Thing in the Ice seemed really great to me. Best card in the deck. It's very interesting.
Definitely top 4. So so I played Friday night at FNM and I 3-0'd, but I 3-0'd with a hodgepodge of my own version of this deck that I had to put together. It was a couple basics in the place of the Spire Bluff Canals. I played 1 Terramander, 2 Bedlam Reveler. I believe I played, what's another card that people, because I didn't have the Crackling Drake.
Do you have Enigma Drake or whatever?
Young Pyromancer?
I played a 3rd Young Pyro in the main because the version I played 2.
Okay.
So that would replace the 4th Thing in the Ices, and then one other card that I don't quite remember offhand. But it was a version of the deck that was missing some of the most essential cards, and those are the games I played. And I really liked it, and the deck was still powerful because all the cards I mentioned are still good. But I showed up to the GP on Saturday morning and got the last cards I needed, and I showed up, and it was like, 8:45. I got a couple ceremonious rejections, which I needed for the sideboard, and was sitting there. And it's like 8:55, and I'm about to write the deck list, and they announce round 1 pairings are up. Tournament starts at 9. They announce them at 8:55. In my mind, usually they start 10 minutes late. There's a player meeting, and then the thing starts. That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
GPs are run a lot faster these days. They're run better.
Yeah, I noticed day 1 was over like pretty quick. It was over by like 6 p.m. or something. It was like, wow, you could just leave the hall and go get dinner and you're not like starving?
Yeah, it's
not like 9 p.m.
I know. So it's totally different. I mean, they've obviously made an effort, and so they announce pairings, and then as I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay, I gotta get my table to do. Like, and feature match, Ben Bateman. And I'm like, wait a minute, I have a feature match and I haven't written my deck list yet? What am I doing? So this is my 2nd feature match, and both times it's in the first 2 rounds because I don't play enough GPs to have buys.
Yep.
So I race over, and Corbin's like, we give you a feature match? You don't even have your deck list? Come on. And he's like giving me a hard time, and I sit down, and I literally scribble the thing through, make sure it's right, double check the basic lands, because the first competitive tournament in LA I ever played was 10 years ago, and it was a standard PTQ, and I didn't write down the basic lands. I got a game loss in game 1 for it. So I know, it was the worst. I was playing Rune Flare Trap. Standard.
Yeah, because the first thing judges do is at a tournament is they'll have judges walking around doing their thing, but a couple of judges will just sit down and look through all the deck lists and look for obvious problems, like missing basic lands, doesn't have 60 cards, has too many cards in the sideboard, stuff like that, and it's like,
yeah, you get your loss real fast.
No basic lands is a pretty easy one to notice.
Let me just adjust my love here, guys, so you don't hear me.
We have somebody in the stream asking, you can maybe discuss this later, but do you think this deck and Phoenix in general decks are safe from bannings for now?
For now, yes. It's too new.
You don't think that Faceless Looting could get a hit?
Faceless Looting, yes. The last banning was like, what, 3 weeks, a month ago? So we're like probably, what, 2 months out?
Yeah, well, they have the Mythic Championship London is going to be Modern. Modern GP and Modern Pro Tour at the same event at the Mythic Championship, or at the...
Yeah, the Mythic Championship.
It's a Mythic Championship and a Grand Prix together at Magic Fest London, is what I mean to say, right?
It seems unlikely that we're going to see a banning of Faceless Looting.
Sorry, it's sealed. The GP is sealed, and the Mythic Championship is Modern. That's right. But
go ahead, sorry.
Well, yeah, so it seems like they for a while had been banning things right before the Pro Tour to make sure that like interesting stuff was happening on the Pro Tour, but they stopped doing that. If I recall correctly, it sounded like they were like, we're not going to do that anymore. Now I don't remember if they exactly said that or if it just seemed implied, but it makes me think that they probably won't ban anything right before the Mythic Championship. But after the Mythic Championship, they'll be testing out the new Mulligan rule, and so I feel like they wouldn't even ban anything right after the Mythic Championship either, because if anything, skewed results of the Mythic Championship are more likely to be a result of the Mulligan rule than it is a result of like a particular card being too powerful.
Faithless Looting is really good. It makes a lot of decks really good. You hurt the format a lot if you take out Faithless Looting. There's a lot of really cool things people have enjoyed doing that you don't get to do anymore. So I haven't seen Hollow One in a little while. That deck's like kind of fallen out of favor. But
I think Phoenix kind of
took over,
usurped its spot as like the fast Faithless Looting deck.
I mean, the Phoenix deck, it gets a lot worse. You probably can't play it. Hollow One probably isn't a deck if you lose it. You Dredge, it's debatable, but like there's probably a version of Dredge you can play without it.
I think Dredge is powerful enough, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but like, we'll see. Things are the new kid on the block. That happens all the time, and then things adjust and are no longer the best deck. I mean, Grixis Shadow is a great example of this. Over time, Grixis Shadow just wasn't the best deck anymore.
The one thing that's nice about Phoenix, I will say, is that like Phoenix is really the only expensive card. I mean, you need fetches and shocklands, but assuming you've been playing Modern for a while, you might have them, or at least have them in other colors that you can trade for Tarns and Steam Vents or...
Tarns are like the hardest one though, by far.
It's true.
They're
But if you have Tarns and Steam Vents, like I do, for example, I built Phoenix because I owned Tarns and Steam Vents, and the rest of the deck is dirt cheap, and then Phoenix's. And Phoenix is the only thing you need.
Dirt cheap is a little bit of an exaggeration. Thing in the
Not
Ice
dirt cheap.
Thing in the Ice is not cheap anymore.
How much is Thing in the Ice?
Regular is $16.
Oh my gosh, I bought mine for $4.
Yeah, I wish I had.
Never mind.
I mean, it's not crazy expensive. Like there are decks in Modern that are like $1,600. This is not one of those decks. But in any case, it's a very powerful deck. I show up, I'm on camera, and I just get ripped apart in the chat. Now, I haven't gone back to watch the match because I'm sure there's a bunch of mistakes that I would be like, oh my god, I can't believe I did that. But let it be noted, guys, this was the first game I had ever played with this deck. Literally, the first game I had ever played with a Thing in the Ice in the deck. Like, the Young Pyromancer triggers, the Thing in the Ice triggers, the Phoenix triggers. It's a lot to keep track of. So...
Plus, when you're on a feature match, there's so much pressure.
Yeah, I got paired.
It's not something that you can easily get used to.
No, I'm a good Magic player, but I'm not a great Magic player. Like, I haven't committed that many hours to gameplay. I've committed, but like, if a pro commits 8 hours of gameplay or 6 hours of gameplay a day to Magic, I have committed 30 minutes a day to Magic my whole life. Like, I love it. I've played countless weekends and tons of tournaments, but I don't game to like learn the nuances of every single card that's powerful so that when I play a card for the first time, I will never miss a trigger. That just doesn't happen. I don't have the time for that. What I do have the time for is to play cards that I think are awesome, which is what I did with this deck. And what I'll say is the most difficult part about playing Izzet Phoenix is that the count, keeping track of your triggers and making sure to resolve every trigger before the spell resolves is the hardest thing in the deck.
Yeah, because if you play Faithless Looting and you immediately draw a card, you've missed your trigger. It's too late.
Yes.
You can, especially at a GP. At F&M, maybe they'll be a little bit more lenient, but at a GP, it's too late.
And if you get used
you don't get your Thing in the Ice, you don't get your Phoenix, you don't get anything.
If you get used to shortcutting, where you're like, okay, play Faithless Looting, and then you like sort of like look at your Young Pyromancer, but you don't grab the token, you start to draw the cards, it's already too late.
Yeah.
Like they will take advantage of that. And the thing that's so important about Phoenix is your most important count is 3, right? There are 3 spells for a Phoenix. That's the key of the deck. Second most important count is 4 counters on your Thing in the Ice. And in the version I was playing, the third most important count is going to be your Young Pyromancer tokens. Now, there are other interactions, like, for instance, keeping track of how many cards are in your graveyard that make Terramander or Bedlam Reveler cheaper. There are other things that are important.
How big is your Crackling Drake?
How big is your Crackling Drake? Exactly. Things like that all matter. Keeping track of, for instance, if you Gut Shot as the third spell to trigger your Crackling Drakes, it will also make your Crackling Drake bigger, your Terramander cheaper, and reduce their life total by 1 point so that when you swing, now the life total is one closer to counting for exact.
Right, if you have a Crackling Drake and you Gut Shot them, you're kind of doing 2 damage because you do the 1 from the Gut Shot and then 1 more from the Crackling Drake.
Exactly.
And then maybe you also have an extra token and yeah.
Keeping track of all this stuff is when you play and you have a Pyromancer and a Thing in the Ice, and you trigger your Thing in the Ice, you can stack your Pyromancer trigger with the Thing in the Ice so that the bounce and flip goes off before the token comes into place.
that's
You're
nice.
left with the token. I didn't know this. These
Yeah,
are things-
I hadn't thought of that because I wasn't playing Young Pyromancer in my version of the deck.
So these are kind of all the things that you have to pay attention to, and needless to say, I missed a bunch of those things. People said that in game 2 there was a lethal attack that I missed. It's possible. I missed some of my triggers, and the judge gave me a hard time, and he was a very serious man who was uninterested in...
It's a Grand Prix and feature match area. It's
Yes.
serious business.
He just was uninterested in being kid gloves or having a bedside manner. He just really wanted me to do it right. He was not pleased that I wasn't.
Yep.
So that was distracting, and it made it hard to focus on the match. But whatever, it was Black-Green Elves that I was playing against, which is funny because the other feature match I had in Vegas last summer was also Black-Green
I
Elves.
remember, and you drew, and it was a similar situation where like you didn't have a ton of experience with the deck. You'd played a few matches with it before the tournament, but it was a control deck, so you really have to think about all your decisions, and you didn't have enough time.
Yes, that deck could close the game out fast, but it had to close it fast by drawing a combo piece. It didn't really have the ability to just like win with tempo.
Yeah.
So Black-Green Elves was my first match. I get the win. It goes long. It's close. I like breathe a sigh of relief that I didn't lose the match. It was exciting though. It was an exciting way to start the day, and it really set the tone for an exciting day for me. I did notice immediately how powerful Thing in the Ice was, and felt really good about the deck choice.
Especially against elves. I mean, that's like one of those go wide creature decks where they're like, they finally get their Heritage Druid online and they collected company, and now they just have like a million creatures and your life total's getting low, and then you flip Thing in the Ice and reset them, and there's nothing they can do about it.
So I know that I went 10-5 over 2 days. I'm positive of this. I wish that I had every single match in order.
I remember you went X2 at the end of day 1, right? And then so you must have lost 2 on day 2, 3 on day...
I'm X2 at the end of day 1, the cut to day 2. So 6-2.
Right.
X2, and then I lost my 9th match, which happens at the end of the day.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize it worked like that.
Yes.
I haven't played in a GP since... Oh, I haven't played in a GP where I was going to make day 2 since then.
So the way it now works is at the end of 8 rounds, everybody with a 6-2 record or better makes day 2. They play the first round of day 2 at the end of day 1. Everybody else gets to go home, but you have to play the 9th round. And the idea is to reduce the length of day 2 for people.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Since they have to do top 8 and everything.
Exactly. And so my matchups, I wish I could remember them all offhand, but I have a decent memory at this, so probably I should be able to get through them.
Yep.
I can tell you my losses, and I should be able to figure out my wins from there.
Yep.
I lost to Cheerios, which
Okay.
is the Pure Steel Paladin deck. That's the Pure Steel Paladin and SRAM and all of the zero-mana artifacts.
It was mono white Cheerios.
It was blue-white.
Because you got to play Retract and maybe
Yeah.
Hercule's Recall, right?
Yep, exactly. So that's Cheerios. I lost to an Izzet Phoenix Mirror. I lost to Dredge. I may have even lost the Dredge twice now that I think about it. But I'm positive I lost the Dredge once. I lost to Hardened Scales.
Dredge is a tricky matchup. I played against Dredge in the few times I've taken my Blue-Red Phoenix to FNM, and yeah, it's like all comes down to Thing in the Ice. If they can conflagrate your Thing in the Ice, you probably lose, and if they don't, you probably win. Because it just is so good against them.
Conflagrate's an underratedly good card in that deck. I didn't understand quite how powerful it was.
Conflagrate wins a lot of Dredge's matchups. I mean, pretty much every matchup where your opponent's relying on creatures, it's going to win that matchup. It beats elves and other collected company decks. It beats humans. It beats, Hardened Scales. It just beats a lot of stuff just by like sweeping their board for one turn, because all your creatures are free. All your creatures are coming in free.
Right.
So you're just like constantly applying pressure. All you have to do is just remove your opponent's ability to win the game for 1 or 2 turns, and then you've got it. It's locked up.
Yeah, it's definitely very powerful. I think I lost the 2 Dredge decks. It's possible that I'll remember the other deck I lost to as we talk about all of this. But I know that I beat Elves in round 1. I'm positive that I beat 2 Death Shadow decks, both Grixis.
Okay.
I beat a Whir of Invention deck, a prison deck, which was probably... I don't think it was Grixis Prison. I think it was
Blue-Red?
Yeah, it might have even just... I'm trying to remember... He had a Tezzeret for sure at one point.
5 minutes, is right?
4 mana Tezzeret.
Oh, then that's black, right? So just blue-black?
Yeah, I think it's just blue-black.
He's playing Thopter Sword?
Nope.
So the side note from GPLA is that the SEG Classic Modern in Syracuse last weekend, it was won by Grixis Whir with Thopter Sword combo in it, which I thought was cool, because a lot of the times those prison decks are just winning off of like looping Pyrite Spellbomb with Academy Ruins or some god-awful win con like that. So I thought seeing Thopter Sword in it was really cool.
I do apologize, guys, if my lav is giving you trouble in the live stream. It keeps kind of pulling down.
Do you want a adjusted to the outside of your lapel there?
I thought I had. I'm gonna do it one more time.
Maybe if you could put it on the other side.
Yeah,
then I'm
these
turned
these
away
lavs
from
are new for the YouTube audio. So if you guys want to let us know in the stream chat if the audio gets messed up, our producer Marshall is listening to the podcast audio. So if you guys want to give us a heads up if something's going on with the mics, we're using a new setup. We're constantly trying out new stuff and trying to make this the best we can right now. So once something works great, we're gonna keep using it.
So Word of Invention, Tron. I definitely played against Affinity.
Mono Green Tron?
Mono Green Tron. Yep.
It's the standard Tron, but you never know. Somebody could be throwing it back.
I played against Affinity, Tron, Word, Grixis Shadow twice, Elves, Mono Red Prison.
Ooh, okay, like the Simian Spirit Guide Rituals into Blood Moon deck.
Exactly. So that's 1, 2,
Blood
3,
Moon
4,
seems
5, 6,
terrible against Phoenix, but
7 of the wins. Let's think other decks that are big in Modern that I might have played against that we're forgetting.
Did you play against any Sultai base decks? There's a bunch of different flavors.
None of the Sultai decks.
Blue Eye Control.
No Blue Eye Control. I didn't play against traditional Burn. Oh, I did play against Burn. I beat a Burn player. That was exciting. I remember
That's got to be a nail biter.
Yeah. I think,
with Phoenix, because you're both just kind of racing and not really interacting with each other that much.
yeah, he was. He got close. He stalled out one game on lands, and I think I went to 1. No. I was sitting at 4. Yeah. In fact, maybe I'll remember my last matchup. But this is 8 of them right here, so I can at least talk about each one. So Elves was interesting, on camera. Obviously, we went to 3 games. They were solid games. I missed some triggers. Shaman of the Pack does a ton of damage, and you have to just not let them go that long to get Shaman of the Pack on board. They don't have any flying blockers really, and the whole trick is you just have to be able to kill the key creatures with lightning bolts. Your gut shots are okay. Like taking out an elf is pretty good, but just 1-for-1ing their bad creatures, it doesn't matter as much. You
take out a Heritage Druid with
yes.
a bolt or with a gut shot though.
That's
which is
extremely good. Also taking out Elvish Archdruid or Azuri. Those are the creatures that you have to kill. Or Heritage Druid. Those keeping them off the combo, keeping them off tons and tons of mana. So that one was relatively close. Grixis Death Shadow, you'd think that they would have a lot on you. You would think they'd be pretty good. But what ended up happening was Blood Moon just won the games. Repeatedly, Blood Moon just won the games.
Also, what's interesting about Grixis Phoenix, and one of the reasons that Blue Red Phoenix, and one of the reasons I think it's taking off over Hollow One is that it's so resilient to Thoughtseize, because you have all these cantrips and you're just constantly ripping through your deck that your opponent is going to Thoughtseize you, and they're going to see Thing in the Ice and 4 cantrips, and they're well, I guess I take Thing in the Ice, and then you just play your 4 cantrips, get back a Phoenix, draw a Thing in the Ice over the course of those 4 cantrips anyway, and then you just kill them anyway.
Yeah, I mean, definitely Thing in the Ice bouncing a Gurmag Angler is powerful for you, and there are things that are good. You don't have a lot of ways to kill their biggest creatures. You have to bounce their biggest creatures, but
you can also block with Phoenix.
Yeah, you can block with Phoenix, and that's pretty good, and you can maybe kind of race them. But definitely, I had one game where I was very clearly dead, and Young Pyromancer, a Pyromancer with 2 tokens was able to block a Shadow and an Angler 3 turns in a row off playing 2 cantrips and just stay alive. And then eventually it was block with these 2 tokens and bolt your Angler. Now you've just got a Shadow. I have enough ways to get there. Now I put 2 Phoenixes in my graveyard over the course of this time.
Yeah, I mean, what's good against Death Shadow is because they're usually relying on one big creature and they're just protecting it with Thoughtseize and Stubborn Denials and stuff and Fatal Pushes. I remember when Grixis Death Shadow was at its height, that's when Mardu Pyromancer broke out, because Pyromancer is just so good against the Death Shadow deck, because just chumping them every turn for 3 turns to give yourself time to just kill them, because they get their life total low for you, and then all you have to do is just chump for a few turns, and then they just leave themselves vulnerable.
Yeah,
so you playing 2 Young Pyromancer, I think, probably really improved your Death Shadow matchup.
Absolutely, and in game 2, having a counter or 2, I had 2 Spell Pierce and a Dispel on my sideboard, so I would bring in Dispel, 2 Pierce, and then the 2 Blood Moons against them, and I found that to be pretty effective.
Can we move your mic just a little bit further away from, you have some where you're talking over it.
Over the mic? Okay, sounds good. Somebody in the chat just called me Rico Suave, told me to button up my shirt. Sure, it'll stay in the right place. Well, no. How's that?
Don't shame him, David.
So yeah, I think in that matchup, Blood Moon is the card you want to draw. Sometimes they get lucky and they hit one of their basics, but like they just don't do very much if you lock them out of blue. Like their ability to turn their deck fast, to like interact with you, stubborn denial, a lot of that stuff. It's just really hard for them.
Yeah, if you cut them off blue, they're just like playing off the top of their deck.
Yeah, they're like they can draw Kolaghan's Command if they have basics and a black source, but a lot of what they're doing, the red is just for like Lightning Bolt and like a Kolaghan's Command. It's just like not in there for very much. So that was Grixis Death Shadow. War Prison is really good. The Ensnaring Bridge Bottled Cloister combo means that you just like basically can't win unless you burn them out. And if they draw another Whir, then it's going to be like a Witchbane Orb. So you get locked out really hard against that deck. My sideboard, I took out the Abrades last minute, but I did have one Shatterstorm. And I was able to kill him in games 2 and 3 with that one Shatterstorm. So
it's the power of playing 16 cantrips.
Yeah, you draw a lot of Shatterstorm. I milled it, I remember. I guess I never milled it because I was able to play it in both games. But
well, that's one thing that's interesting is and this is something I hadn't seen a lot out of the Blue-Red Phoenix deck, but one of the players in the top 8 who lost in the quarterfinals was playing 2 Snapcaster in like the 4th creature slot, where he had like 4 Phoenix, 4 Thick in the Ice, 2 Crackling Drake, just like the standard Phoenix list that people are playing right now. And then instead of the 2 Pyromancer that you were playing, or the 2 Terramander that the person who won was playing, they were playing 2 Snapcaster, which I thought was interesting. And it does mean that when you Thought Scour away your like 1 of sideboard card, you can rebuy it with Snapcaster. And that's 6 mana for a Shatterstorm, but depending on what card you're trying to flash back, if it's like a Shattering Spree or something.
Shattering Spree you don't want to have in there because of specifically Welding Jar. So all of the artifact decks are playing Welding Jar at this point.
Well, you can target an artifact 2 times with the same Shattering Spree. Because you just make copies of it when you replicate. So you can just say, I'll target your Arcbound Ravager 3 times with this Shattering Spree or whatever.
But that doesn't, if you target it twice and they put a Regeneration Shield on it, it doesn't protect it for the rest of the turn?
No, because it regenerates once, then it'll tap, remove all damage, and remove all and remove it from combat, and then it'll die on the second one. But it's more mana intensive when they have a Welding Jar.
And Shatterstorm just like ends the game.
Right, yeah, totally. It's just, I guess Shattering Spree is better with Snapcaster. You weren't playing Snapcaster. So.
Right. But Shattering Spree is a cheaper spell.
Just speculating on like, different builds of Blue-Red Phoenix in terms of what you were playing, what other people were playing.
So that's War Prison. War Prison was an interesting matchup. It was like, it's a super boring deck. It's like not a very fun deck to play against. But it's powerful, and artifacts are great. You can do colorless things. He was trying to, lock me out. He Ipnu Rivuletted me out of the game at one point, which is like what they do. They mill you out with a land. They get the land back over and over again. So that's interesting, especially when you're like Thought Scouring yourself.
Well, they're playing like main deck Surgical Extraction most of the time too, right?
Yeah. The next matchup was Tron. Again, Blood Moon won me games against Tron. I just remembered I played against also, what's it called?
Titan Shift? Amulet?
Amulet. Yeah, which I'll get to that in a second. I played against Tron. Blood Moon won me that game very clearly. It was really, really fun. I played against it in my last matchup of the weekend, and I believe also in day 1. Oh, so I played against 2 Tron decks. Yeah. So is that all my wins? Amulet, Burn, Prison, Affinity, Tron, Whir, Shadow, Elves. Yeah, that's all my wins. And if I lost to Dredge twice, then that's all the matchups. So playing against regular Affinity, they're just trying to kill you and be fast, and it's good. I won against both Affinity and Prison by drawing said Shatterstorm. I don't think I beat Affinity in one of the games with the Shatterstorm. I think it was only one of the 2. Shatterstorm literally won me both of the games against the Prison deck.
Well, you did mention that you were playing 3 Gutshot, which is more, I think, than most people in their Phoenix decks, and that has to like help with the Affinity matchup, right?
It's really good. Yeah, Gutshot's great. So one of my losses in day 2 was against Hardened Scales, and my 3 Gutshots, I had 2 in the opening hand in this game, so this is like funny. On turn 1, I go Faithless Looting. Draw, one of the cards is a Phoenix. So I put the Phoenix face down in front of me. I'm like, okay, that one's going away. Which of the rest of these cards in my hand am I going to get rid of? I tank. Put 2 cards in the graveyard. Then I look down and realize the Phoenix is still not discarded. I didn't discard Phoenix, and I burned the entire turn. So at that point, I was planning, probably stupidly, on playing double Gutshot on turn 1 and just attacking on the play with 3 with a Phoenix.
But then you didn't discard the Phoenix.
But I didn't discard the Phoenix, and I was like, and I didn't know what he was playing because I was on the play that game. And he goes, Ink Moth, 4 artifacts, whatever, and I'm just like, well, I have these Gutshots now. Yeah. And so on turn 2, I go spell, Gutshot, get a Phoenix back. attack. I can't remember how he gets rid of it, but he gets rid of the Phoenix.
Yeah.
And then he tries to go all in and sacrifice everything between a Hardened Scales and an Inkmoth Nexus, and I have the second gut shot in hand, and I'm tapped out, and I take out his entire board. He's left with literally a Hardened Scales, and it's like turn 3. And it was only because I didn't go for the stupid turn 1 Phoenix play that I had the second gut shot, or the gut shot at all, so it worked out for me.
Yeah, I mean, that, like, forget to discard your Phoenix. Every GP that I've played in, I can think back to, like, the one mistake that lost me the whole thing, and it always sounds like that, where it's like, what was I thinking? Why didn't I do it? And it's funny that it worked out for you.
Yeah, it actually was the reason I won, and then I lost games 2 and 3. That deck is very powerful, Hardened Scales. It's incidental that the finals of this event actually was Izzet Phoenix versus Hardened Scales, and Izzet Phoenix won in that case.
Yeah.
But that was the Hardened Scales matchup in game 2. Mono Red Prison, again, I don't even think Shatterstorm won me the game. I think I just was faster. I think he, like...
Yeah, well, Blood Moon's pretty bad against you. Chalice is good, but you can beat a Chalice because all your threats are expensive. So you can literally just, like, play spells into the Chalice and let them get countered to, like, trigger your Thing in the Ice 100%. Or trigger your Phoenixes.
You just... I mean, it's impressive how much better this deck is than the old school, like, Death Shadow type of deck where your best threat costs 1 also, so a Chalice really hurts you.
Well, they had Angler, which was nice, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this deck, like, playing a 3-2 Phoenix for 4 is okay. Like, you just can Lightning Bolt in that way, and you still get to do all your triggers by casting spells. So literally your Pyromancer, Thing in the Ice, and Phoenix, they don't care that much if the spell's getting countered because you still get something out of every spell. So the Chalice plan is not as good against you, and Blood Moon's bad against me too. So I was able to get the win there.
Yeah, and a lot of times they'll, like, spew cards to get their Chalice or Blood Moon out early. They'll, like, play Pyretic Ritual or Simian Spirit Guide to get a Chalice down on turn 2, or Chalice down on turn 1, or Blood Moon down on turn 3, and then, like, they're just, like, spewing their whole hand because they're hoping this one card will beat you, and then if it doesn't beat you, they, like, run out of steam.
Right. So then the Burn matchup was pretty interesting. You know, as it always is with Burn, you have to just hope they kind of stall out, you stabilize, and they draw lands. I went to 4, and this was the really interesting part. I went to 4, and I had a Pyromancer in play. He had 2 creatures. He had a Monastery Swiftspear and a Goblin Guide. And at that point, I had, like, enough spells and a Pyromancer that I was like, okay, so what I have to do here is never, ever crack this fetch and never let my life total go below 3. Because one of the 2 cards in his hand, one of them is very likely a 3-mana burn spell, but he also could draw a haste creature at any time. So I can never attack unless I have the advantage of not going below and allowing him to either resolve a haste creature and play a spell or play 2 spells. If he has 2 burn spells, fine, he'll win the game, but that's the way he's going to have to beat me, and I have enough turns to get there at 4 life that I can negotiate this board state from there. And that was the trick, and I stalled it for 4 turns, and he didn't draw the right thing, and I was able to close it out.
That's scary, because, like, you don't want the game to go too long, because then he's more likely to have drawn the 2 burn spells, but you also, like, you know, don't want to just lose the 1 burn spell at it because you played poorly, right?
Yeah,
so
you don't have that much time, but, like, I can't remember how I won the game, but it's possible it was a Crackling Drake. You know, Crackling Drake is very good.
Yeah. Okay, so I was thinking about it because of Chalice. We were talking about 1-mana spells in the deck. This is kind of a selfish question because I'm trying to decide whether I want to play this in my Izzet Phoenix. Were you playing Chart a Course?
No.
No Chart a Course. Okay.
Nope.
Because the winner was playing 1 Chart a Course, and I like the idea of Chart a Course, and it's really good in the standard version of the deck, which I've played a lot on Arena because it's so much easier to play Arena. I've played actually a ton of Blue-Red Drakes in Arena, but not in Modern as much as I would like. But yeah, I really like Chart a Course in the standard version. And what made you not want to play it in Modern?
I mean, mostly it's because I promised I'd play a good deck, and I had to go off a list that had won. So the list that I built off of was basically a winning list. And I will, you know, we have a few minutes left. I'm gonna at the end of this do a quick deck tech on the deck I played, and I can talk about the card choices.
Oh, sure. Well, we'll do that when it's time then. Why don't you talk about your matchups?
So the last matchup in day 1, I believe, or that I won, I can't remember which of these was day 1, which was day 2, was the Amulet matchup, which, as you can imagine, just comes down to Blood Moon. It comes down to Blood Moon and killing Azusa. That's basically it. If you have that instant speed interaction to kill Azusa, it works. Game 1, he mulled down to 5, kept a 0 lander, and was still able to win, which is crazy. Whew. I didn't have a very fast hand, but like that deck is great. Like if they draw their land, they play their Amulet, like they get going. And if they resolve Primeval Titan, then like missing those land drops does not matter.
So this is like a preview for next week's episode, but yeah, Amulet mulling to 5, keeping a no lander. Like how much better would their hand have been if they got to draw 7 and put 2 back?
so much better. The fact that they already
and they
won.
still won, yeah. So
yeah, the deck
I mean,
is very powerful.
preview of London Mulligan discussion next week.
But I mean, also very fragile. It's hard for them to win without Azusa. The one drop that puts a land into play is good, but Azusa, like, it's 2 extra lands per turn. Like,
Yeah.
they go so fast with that card. But yeah, I believe Blood Moon won me one of the games, and I think it was that keeping him off of his extra land drops, he couldn't get to 6 in one of the games by killing Azusa and killing the other thing. Like, yeah, I think I just was a little faster. The losses, Cheerios, they're just very fast, and if you don't have enough removal spells for their SRAM or their
Crystal Paladin.
they're just going to win. Like, that deck is just critical mass. As soon as they get going, they almost can't lose. It's like the whole entire deck is just like one game plan. Against Izzet Phoenix in the mirror, I started thought scouring them with surgicals in hand to try to take out their phoenixes, which is in the game 2. That's what they told me. That is the smartest thing to do. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I just remembered I played against Ad Nauseam. So one of these is wrong. I must not have played against Dredge twice, but I beat Ad Nauseam for sure. So Dredge is better than you. It's faster than you. It doesn't. You have to have the right draw, like exactly the right draw against Dredge.
I feel like Thing in the Ice is a key card against them, right?
It is, and it is good. But like again, if you flip a Thing in the Ice and you bounce a bunch of their creatures, it's not like they have all the creatures in play already. They just Dredge again the next turn, and they get more creatures, and they hit Creeping Chills, and Creeping Chills are really good against you.
Yeah, Creeping Chill's really good.
Like one guy, the guy I lost to in Dredge at the end of day 1 hit like 3 Creeping Chills in his first Dredge. Like he'd like Faithless Looting and Dredge 2 things, and like out of 10 cards or 11 cards, he hit 3 Creeping Chills, and I was like, wow, 18-point life swing.
Yeah,
like,
when the game goes long, they're favored because they just have so much card advantage through dredging that like they're just going to bury you under a big pile of dudes.
Exactly. So Dredge was really hard to beat. Izzet Phoenix matchup, like I think probably favored him because he had played a lot of Izzet Phoenix. Like they just know the matchup a little better than you do. And then Ad Nauseam is what you would think. They're favored heavily in game 1. Your Dispels and Thoughts and Spell Pierces in game 2 are really good, and you just have to go faster. You just have to kill them and like not let them get assemble the combo with like backup. It is a little annoying that they have Angel's Grace, and they just like buying that 1 extra turn often comes down to just Angel's Grace plus Phyrexian Unlife. The fact that you do so much damage in 1 turn doesn't matter because
Phyrexian Unlife seems like it's really good against you.
Because once they hit 0, it just goes into negative life until the next instance of damage. So the combination of Unlife and Angel's Grace makes it very problematic to get past the finish line. But again, your Dispels and Spell Pierces are really good there.
Yeah. So I have a question. Did you did you bring in Dispel or Spell Pierce against Cheerios?
Yes, absolutely.
Just to counter the Retract?
I mean, Retract is the most important card. That and Hurkyl's Recall. Without those cards...
So you bring in removal and you bring in the counter suite for Retract?
Absolutely, yeah. Those are, I mean, that's what you
It
basically
wasn't
have
enough,
to do.
huh?
He just had fast starts both times. I
Jeez.
think I mulled the 6 in both game 2s. I had 3 Lightning Bolts in game 2 and killed 3 creatures in a row. And he had just like a Noxious Revival, and he just got the creature back and won the next turn.
Sometimes they have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good deck, you know, like my deck is positioned kind of well, but my deck's not positioned that well. The deck that really wants to play against that deck is like a fair deck, like a Jund, where it's going to disrupt the creature on turn 1 with a Thoughtseize, and then it's going to bolt it, and then it's going to have like tons and tons of ways to not lose.
Yeah. For sure.
Jeskai is insane, or any of the control decks.
Plus, they do rely on having a critical mass of stuff in hand, so if your Jund opponent has Liliana the Veil, I can't imagine that that's not the worst thing for you. They make you sack your Pure Steel Paladin, and they just eat all the eggs out of your hand, so even if you draw another one, you can't win.
Yes, I think that's what you need there.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about the deck list quickly, just so you can see what I was playing, and then I can talk to you guys about what I think worked and didn't work, because I know we're going a little long, and I don't want to, go too much longer. It's 5 o'clock. So number 1, let's talk about the threats. Threats are 4 Phoenix. We got 4 Thing in the Ice.
Yeah, we got is your list similar to the top? That's the winners list right there.
Yeah, I think I'll tech it off the one I played because I can speak a little more specifically.
Sure, yeah.
We can compare the two. So 4 Phoenix, 4 Thing in the Ice. You've got 2 Crackling Drake, and then 2 Pyromancer. So that's that's the 12 creatures my deck was playing. And I think for the most part, that's what people do. There's an article on SCG this week, Premium, talking about those 2 creatures in the Pyro slot and what you can play instead. Some people play Snapcaster, some people play Bedlam Reveler, some Terramanders. I'd called Corey Burkhart, friend of the show and insane Grixis player, the night before to ask him, what is the deck that I should play and how should I pilot this deck if I don't want to lose to game 2 sideboards that I'm not as familiar with? I was like, I'm leaning into Izzet Phoenix. And he was like, whatever you do, play a version that can pivot away from the graveyard in game 2 so that you don't just get wrecked by the things that are going to try to take your Phoenix out. All the cards people are going to bring in are going to try to wreck your Phoenix. So don't play Terramander, don't play Bedlam Reveler because they just get worse in game 2. Make sure you're playing something that's good on board. So he's like, Pyros sound like a really good choice.
That's interesting because the 2 people in the top 8, one was playing Snapcasters, fairly reliant on the graveyard, although, they're still good against things like Mal Spellbomb or, whatever. And the other one was the guy who won was playing Terramanders, which also rely on the graveyard somewhat, although, again, you can kind of flip them and then your graveyard doesn't matter anymore. But
Right, so 4 Phoenix, 4 Thing, 4 Drake, 2 Pyromancer. Then on the spell side, you've got 4 Serum Visions, you got 4 Thought Scour, you've got 2 Opt, you've got 3 Gutshot, 4 Lightning Bolt, you've got 1 Izzet Charm, 1 Lightning Axe, 1 Flame Slash, 2 Light Up the Stage, and I said 4 Lightning Bolt. Yep, I think that's all the spells the deck's playing. And then finally, the last things are the lands, which I believe I'm playing 19 lands, and it's 4 Tarns, 4 Scalding Tarn, 2, I played Flooded Strand, but any just blue fetch is what you need. You need 6. You need 4 Spire Bluff Canal, 3 Steam Vents, and then 5 basic lands. I played a split of 3 Island and 2 Mountain. So that's 5, 8, 12, 16, 18. So I must be forgetting 1 more land, unless it just plays.
Are you playing Field of Ruin? 1 Field of Ruin?
No, no interactive lands. I think I was just playing. It's possible that I was playing 4 Steam Vents, maybe.
Sure.
That
one land different, but you're playing 19. That's what's most important, right?
I believe so. Yeah, so that's the list. So going through, obviously Phoenix and Thing in the Ice, that's the core of the deck. The 2 Crackling Drake, that's interesting, right, as a 4-drop. It's a little counterintuitive to a new player to think that card's going to be good. Trust me, as somebody who thought that card was not good on first sight, that card's insane. It's the card that wins you the game a lot of the time when you just top deck it. It's such a good top deck in the deck because if somebody doesn't have a way to deal with it, it's a 1-turn clock. Very often you just draw it and you put it down and it represents 17 damage or something.
It's very resilient to Grave Hate, which is super nice because as Ben said, people are bringing in Grave Hate against you, and if you can win through your opponent's Grave Hate, then it's like they're less likely to be able to beat you if they have a Rest in Peace in their hand and you have a Crackling Drake, because they play the Rest in Peace, they exile those cards, and the Crackling Drake counts the instant sorceries in exile, so you just play your deck like normal, eventually you play Crackling Drake, and that's 1 less card they have in their hand to answer it.
It's also a 4-drop, which I didn't play against any Fatal Pushes this weekend, but it has that 1 extra edge against a Fatal Push, it has the 1 extra toughness against the Lightning Bolt. It's just very good. So, and then the Young Pyromancers I was really impressed with. I thought Young Pyromancer was excellent. I really honestly couldn't believe consistently how much value I felt like I was getting out of that card in the matchups that it was good. Just having the extra blockers. Some games you just play it on turn 2, go off with a big Phoenix turn the next turn, and then you just represent all this power. You have all these ways to interact. Young Pyromancer was really impressive to me. As far as the suite of cantrips go, 4 Serum Visions and 4 Thought Scour is pretty self-explanatory. 2 Opt, whatever. 3 Gutshot. The Gutshots are obviously in there for the Phoenixes, but also to power.
4 Looting as cantrips too, right?
Oh yeah, that's the one I probably forgot to write down. The most important one in the whole deck.
So you're playing 14 cantrips?
Yeah, 4 Looting, 4 Serum Visions.
Playing between 12 and 16. So.
Yeah, and I do play 2. I play 1 Izzet Charm, so that's kind of your 5th Faithless Looting.
Yeah, if you need to be discarding a Phoenix, it will let you discard a Phoenix. So.
And it's fine, but I probably cut that card. I would make 2 changes to the main that I'll talk about in a second.
I am really not a big fan of Izzet Charm. I was playing it in Team or Scape Shift because that's what people were doing, and I was like, well, it's flexible. It kills their Deathrite Shaman, which is a pain in the ass. best card
Yeah.
I was playing against at the time. And it like counters their counter spell when you need to defend your escape shift. Maybe it's good, and it just does everything poorly. It does everything, but does it poorly.
It's a poor version of all the cards that it's there to imitate.
2 mana shock, 2 mana spell pierce, 2 mana faithless looting. None of them are like really what you would have been.
Not even a shock. If it was 2 mana shock, that card would be way better.
Oh yeah, because it doesn't hit face, right?
Yeah, it just hits creatures. Like it's just removal. So
It's 2 mana dead.
yeah. If it was 2 mana shock, I think that card would actually be pretty good. Because
Yeah.
if you could use that as a burn spell, then I think in the decks that want to play it, they'd be very happy to
Sure,
play
it'd
it.
definitely be better in this deck.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the ops are fine. You know, the free gut shots are there, obviously, to trigger Phoenix and all your free cards, but they're also in there as another way to play light up the stage to get some card advantage. You asked about Chart of Course. I think that's the slot you would play. You would play Chart of Course instead of light up the stage, probably.
Yeah, as like your card advantage. Because what's nice about Chart of Course is like it's another discard outlet that lets you discard Phoenix, but it's also card advantage if you're playing like a more grindy game where you like care about card advantage. Being able to just like attack with a 1/1 Terramander or something and draw 2 cards if you're like on the back foot or like need to be digging for answers or whatever.
Yep. Continuing down the list, you know, the gut shots were pretty good for me. The 1 Izzet Charm, like we said, wasn't that good. 1 Lightning Axe, 1 Flame Slash. Your Flame Slash is in there primarily for the mirror, I'm guessing, to take out a thing in the ice. That's like why you want it. There's a couple other relevant X4s, but for the most part, I think it's just to not lose to someone else's
It's also
thing.
just like another copy of Lightning Bolt that like gets a important creature like an elf out of the way. Like
yeah, and it's cheap.
yeah.
Lightning Axe, another way to discard a Phoenix. It's interesting. It's 5, so it can take out an Angler. There's a couple things that have 5 toughness that are relevant in Modern.
Terramanders.
Yeah, it was fine. It wasn't insane, but it was fine. Light of the Stage, I was pretty unimpressed with. I think I would cut 1 or both of those. I didn't find it to be that satisfying. It's good in game 2 when you exile like a Dispel or a Spell Pierce or something like that, just because it allows you to kind of play out your next turn with them knowing that they can't do anything because they just see it there.
The cards are exiled. That's interesting. So if you played Light Up the Stage pre-combat and exiled 2 instants, your Crackling Drake would be 2 bigger,
Yeah.
even though you haven't played the cards yet.
Exactly.
Spicy.
It's interesting, and there were some turns where you get like a lot of value, but like you hate exiling a Phoenix early.
Yeah.
Like it's really bad.
Because you can't play it.
Yeah.
That's rough.
There's like a bunch of stuff that just like sucked. I just didn't find it to be very impressive. I cut it a lot of the time. The 4 Faithless Looting are obviously insane, and Lightning Bolt is like, even in the matchups Lightning Bolt's bad, it's still good. Like
Well, yeah, and this is a deck where you really want to be pointing it at face a lot of the time anyway, so.
Yeah, and then the mana base was like silky smooth. It was just like awesome. Never had any issues with it. I found it to be like, Firebluff Canal is great. You know, the fact that you were playing no colorless lands are really important because you're maximizing your mana almost every single turn. You need like a lot of blue-red. Oh, 4 Manamorphos. That's the last card we missed.
Oh, yep. That's an important one too.
Yeah, and Manamorphos it's like Faith's Looting. You need it for the deck. It's one of the most important cards in the whole deck. So
Yeah, it gets all those triggers. Free Young Pyromancer trigger, free Phoenix trigger, free Thing in the Ice trigger.
So you're running 18 cantrips then.
yeah, I mean you've got your
I was thinking 1 mana cantrips when I was saying that, but yeah, you're always running 4 Manamorphos in addition to your 12 to 16 1 mana cantrips.
So then in the sideboard, you've got 2 Ceremonious Rejection. You've got 1 Dispel. You've got 2 Spell Pierce. You've got 2 Anger of the Gods. You have 3 Surgical Extraction. We've got
Shadowstorm,
1 Shatterstorm,
Blood Moon.
2 Blood Moon.
The 2 you mentioned the most during the cast.
The Blood Moon?
The Blood Moon and the Shadowstorm.
Yeah, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. 1 Cerebral Vortex.
Oh boy.
Yeah, we'll talk about this one in just a second. That was definitely my favorite sideboard card. And then, last but not least, was probably, I'm forgetting the last sideboard card.
Removal spell of some kind.
We had the counter spells, the
Counterspell.
pierce, the dispel, the surgical.
So like another Lightning Axe or...
No, I don't think it was another
Slash.
burn spell. I think it was...
You said you took a Braid out of the sideboard? So
Took a Braid out of the sideboard. Yeah, right offhand, I don't quite remember. I guess I can just like look here and see if there's anything that triggers.
Oh yeah,
it.
we'll post the deck list up.
Yeah.
And we'll have it all out there for the cast to see. But talk about what you do remember.
Yeah. So basically, the Dispels and the Spell Pierces came in a lot. I think Spell Pierce, Dispel, and Blood Moon were probably the cards that I brought in the most consistently. Pierce and Dispel are just like great in the matchups. They're great. The fact that you go one turn slower, but like they've brought in something to stop you. So having your dispel for their surgical, and they're going to go for it, and thinking they're going to get off when you have like the Phoenixes, often is enough to just win the game, because that's why they kept their opening hand, and it's probably not that. Somebody just fell over upstairs, and it's not that good otherwise. The 2 Anger of the Gods, like that's really good against Dredge. The fact that you can take out all of the prized amalgams is really strong. Against decks like Counter's Company, it's really, really good. Elves.
Spirits, humans.
Yeah, like Anger, you probably want to have 2 in your sideboard.
Wide creature decks.
The 3 surgicals are clearly just like for
I want to see the winning deck list next year's.
Yeah, the 3 surgicals are pretty obviously for the mirror match. That's like why they're in there, and they're really, really good. The Blood Moons were probably my favorite card of the whole entire weekend. Surprised at how good the Blood Moon was, even in a field that is so primarily covered in this deck.
Yeah, well, it's funny because you played against a deck that is like their entire game plan is just put Blood Moon into play and have it win the game by itself. So I think that speaks to how good the card is, even if it's not good in the meta, there are matchups that are just, it wins the game by itself.
Shadowstorm, I mentioned how good it was, and the final card here, I can't remember the 15th card, but the final card here was, and Ceremonious Rejection. That's the card I wanted to talk about.
Okay.
Ceremonious Rejection was excellent. It was really, really powerful.
Yeah, I've been a fan of it.
It's good. It's 1 blue, counter target colorless spell. I mean, it's obviously really good against Tron. It's a hard counter for Karn. It's a hard counter for Ugin. It's a hard counter for Wormcoil, for Walking Ballista.
And they're like tapping out for these cards.
It's a hard counter against a lot of the most important cards in Hardened Scales. And either of the X creatures, Steel Overseer, Ravager, like it's very good there. And then against Prison, it's really good as well. Like countering an Ensnaring Bridge or something like that is essential.
Or Chalice.
So I was impressed with Ceremonious Rejection.
Well, I guess Grafdigger's Cage isn't that good against you. It's
pretty good.
You can kind of ignore it.
Stops your Phoenixes. You can't flash back your Faithless Lootings. Yeah, it's all right. And then finally, Cerebral Vortex. Some of you guys probably don't know. It's blue-red 1 for an instant. It's from Dissension, I think. And it's target... Guild Pact. Target player draws 2 cards and then takes damage equal to the number of cards they have drawn this turn. So end of turn, you can play it on yourself, lose 2, draw 2. It's like a bad light at the stage or something like that. But in the Phoenix Mirror, 1 Faithless Looting on their turn means they've now drawn 5 cards that turn. Which if it's a Phoenix turn and they're playing like 2 other cantrips and possibly a Gut Shot, that's going to represent 7 or even 8 or even sometimes 9 damage if it's a huge turn. And in the Izzet Phoenix matchup where I brought it in, I was literally a lightning bolt off the top away from winning because I end of turn 8'd him on his big turn. And it's exactly why I brought it in, and it's a little slow, and I don't think I'd recommend it to someone playing the deck. But then again, it's one of the most unique I win cards in that matchup, so maybe it's better than I thought. In that Cheerios matchup, if I had had that card in hand and he didn't have a counterspell, he just loses on the spot.
Yeah.
He tries to resolve Grape Shot, and I just dome him for like 30.
Yeah.
So
it's true. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical of a 3-mana card that doesn't bring back Phoenix, but not very well at least.
Probably the better move than having it in the sideboard would be to main deck that card in place of one of the Light Up the Stages and just be okay drawing it and having it in your opening hand because it's just going to be a card draw spell. And incidentally, sometimes in game 1, you're just going to beat a deck with it.
Yeah.
That's probably because you're not like mulliganing to that card in the Izzet Phoenix matchup because they bring in counter spells just like you.
Yeah, it's also sucks because it's not very proactive. Like you have to have it in your hand when they're drawing the cards. It's not like you can draw it later and slam the Blood Moon and still beat Amulet even though it
Right.
They already played a Primeval Titan and maybe you still win that matchup. Or it's not like, you can draw the Shatterstorm later and blow up the affinity board when they've already attacked you down to 9 poison or whatever. Like you can, well, I guess they still kill you, but
Yeah. So talk about Michael Bernat's list a little bit and how it changed.
One quick question. Given how effective you found Shatterstorm to be, do you think that in the future you might have gone up to 2 copies?
Yeah, I would play a second Shatterstorm in this turn. If I was playing this tournament again, I would play 2 for sure.
You expect to play against a lot of artifact decks?
Yes. I mean, Hardened Scales lost in this, as the second deck. But it's also just like some of the matchups where you can't win. Like you can't really beat the Whir deck unless you do that. So there's like a bunch of matchups where if you board that in and you draw it, it's an I win card. And the fact that it costs 4, not 1, means that like getting around a Chalice, like it's a hard card for the decks that want to interact with it to interact with. And it's pretty powerful. So
so one big difference between the 2 top 8 lists and yours, and this does free up sideboard slots for things like more Shatterstorms, was that they were playing Surgical Extractions main. I think the guy who won was playing 2, is that right?
1.
He's playing 1, and then the other person in the top 8 was playing 2.
Yeah, he was playing 2 Lightning Axe, no Flame Slash. He had a Charter Course, and he didn't have any of the light up the stages. He had 4 Ops instead of my 2, and a Surgical in the main, but he was playing 1 less Gut Shot. And then his creatures, it's the same exact breakdown, except that instead of the 2 Young Pyromancers, he was playing Terramanders.
And he's playing 18 lands.
And he's playing 18 lands, which is actually the same I was playing. It's possible I was playing 18 lands, because the list that I have here is 18.
Oh, got it.
So it's probably the exact same. And then his sideboard was 2 Surgicals, a Pierce, Shattering Spree, Rending Volley, Dragon's Claw, Dispel, a Chandra, a couple Blood Moon, Anger of the Gods, 2 Abrade. The Chandra is an interesting one there, and I thought about doing that. When I exiled my opponent's Phoenixes, I noticed that he had brought in a Ral, Izzet Viceroy, and a Chandra, both of which seem strong in that matchup where
They
you
don't
want to
use your graveyard, right? You were saying when people are bringing in Grave Hate, you want threats that don't bring in, that don't use the graveyard.
Yeah, what'd you have,
If
Marco?
somebody's like
Which Chandra?
The good 4-mana one in Modern.
Torch of Defiance.
Okay.
Yeah, the good one. It's funny because the previous one was the good one, and that's
Pyromaster.
yeah, they're just less good because the other one's just better.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's kind of that's the deck tech. That's the breakdown. This episode has gone a little long, and I want to make sure that we are able to get to the next thing, which is just another episode of the show right away. But
Well, one thing I want to talk about the Surgical Extraction is if you were to play in the tournament again, do you think that you would main deck the Surgical Extraction? I mean, you only played against Dredge once, maybe twice.
Thought
I'm
maybe
not
twice.
exactly sure, but you lost. You lost every time you played against Dredge. Do you think that you should have been playing Surgical Extraction main deck? Do you think it would have helped? I mean, it obviously would have helped against Dredge, but do you think it would have made the deck, like, if you had to do it all over again, would you play main deck Surgical?
I'd be happy to play 1. I mean, especially because the deck goes through its cards so fast. There are some matchups where in game 1, you just are going to get them. Like if you in that Phoenix matchup, if it's in your opening hand and they go for Faithless Looting on turn 1, you're just like, wow, what a lucky way for me to just win game 1 right now. And that's probably a good enough reason to play it. And there are some other decks in Modern too. I mean, for instance, like if on turn 1, if they go for it relatively early with an Inkmoth Nexus, or even if they just activate because they're a little slower and you like gut shot Inkmoth and then have Surgical and you like see a second Inkmoth in their hand, like there's stuff like that that's going to happen.
Yeah, well, and you were telling me about how like sometimes it's worth gut shotting to the face to get back a Phoenix. Well, you can Surgical even if there's nothing relevant in their graveyard. You can just Surgical a fetch land. You get to look at their hand. You get to have another spell to trigger your Phoenix and Pyromancer and Thing in the Ice. And so it's just like another free spell that kind of acts like a gut shot, but it like shines in different matchups versus a gut shot, right?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair and really powerful. So I would consider it. I mean, this guy is better at Magic than me and won a tournament, so I can't really speak too negatively about his choices. But yeah, I think that'll wrap us up. So we'll probably talk about this a little bit more on next week's episode because it's recent and Alex will be back and he'll definitely want to make fun of me a little bit for winning games with a good deck.
What a curse.
Yeah. So thanks for listening. Thanks for watching, guys. Please follow, subscribe on YouTube. It is the most important thing you guys can do. And you guys can follow me at Ben Bateman Media, the podcast at the MMCast.
My Twitter is Dudard, Dudardd.
Yes, and that's going to do that. So thanks for everybody, and we'll see you guys all soon.